Hey guys, welcome back, Michal Hutzko here, and in this video we're gonna talk about nested loops and nested lists. Thank you very much for joining the Python tutorial for beginners, and let's start with the Visual Studio Code. So as I mentioned, elements of the lists can be almost everything, so you can have also lists in lists. I showed some simple examples in the previous video, but let's cover something deeper. Besides nesting lists, you can also nest loops. So for example, you can have for cycle in another for cycle, or while cycle in while cycle. So the thing which we want to do right now, I'm gonna show you how to solve some simple examples using nested loops, and then we will go to another examples of nested lists and also of lists of strings. So let's start with this example. Imagine a task to write a function called display pattern that will, based on the input number, output the following pattern. Yeah, so for example, having the number, let's say 4, this is the 4, the pattern will look like this. It will have 4 rows. In the first row we will have 4 stars, in the second row we will have 3 stars, and then in the third and the fourth will be 2 and 1 star, right? And we will call the pattern like this. Okay, so I will code it for you step by step. So the intuition is right now, as you can see, we are decreasing numbers starting from 4 up to 0. So it's fairly easy that we will need a for loop which will go through a range starting with a higher number and will decrease up to 1, right? But before we do that, let's define the function. So def, and the name of the function should be display pattern. So display pattern, and we will have a variable called number of rows in this case. Number rows, or rows number to make it more correct, right? And now we will go in the for loop for, and we are iterating through the rows, right? So let's go for row in, and now we need to create a range starting from the greatest number, so the row number, up to, we need to end at 1, but the range is an open interval, so we need to put here 0, and we will decrease the number. So let's just start with this simple thing which we did. It's always a good idea to print out the intermediate results to see whether you are on the right track to solve the problem. So let's stick with this definition. Run the definition. Yeah, of course, if you want to run it in the Visual Studio Code, you need to open the Python, then highlight the code and shift enter, and then enter because 3 dots are still here. And now we want to call it, so display pattern, and let's say 4. And when we run it, we got the numbers, right? So we are on the right track. But now, what can we do? How to transfer these numbers into stars? Right, there are a couple of solutions for this problem, but right now I want to show you the 4 in 4 solution. So having nested loops to solve this problem. So how should we achieve the right number of stars in each row? So we go for, and now for star, let's call it star because we are going to output a star in range, and now we are creating a range for each row starting from 0 up to 4. Yeah, it doesn't matter, we just need to repeat it that many times, but this is a nice way to do it. Like this, and up. What is the upper boundary in this case? So if you look, we need to put the upper boundary the current number. So because when we printed the row that was the number, we will use the row also here. Now, and while we have this, we want to print for each iteration in this cycle a star, right? But do you know what's the problem here? The problem here is that print will always output the string in the print into new line. And in order to prevent this, right, you need to put an end parameter at the end. Now, the end parameter, as you can see, is an optional value. Yes, as you can see also here in the definition. So it's optional value, and it specifies the delimiter, well, the ending of the string. So out of the box, it's set to new line. But we can set it, you can see it here, it's here, end equals new line. So that's the definition of it. So you can override it by providing any other string. So right now we don't want anything after to be printed after the star. So you can specify just like this. But what will this do? Let's see. So if I run the definition again, because I changed the function, I need to rerun the definition. And then when I run this, we will have just multiple stars in one line, and that's because we overridden the ending. So now we need for each line to put the new line by ourselves. So how do we achieve this? And we can achieve this after each row. So you can imagine each cycle of the outer loop is a row, and each inner cycle of the second loop is a star, but we want to put the new line after the stars, so we need to put the print here. And when you put the print like this, it will output a new line. I hope so, right? And now everything which is indented in this way belongs to the body of the first cycle. Yes, stop it and think about it. Everything is the one line. So every code in this indentation is one line. So now if I run it again, run the definition, and when I output this, yeah, I didn't press the enter after the definition. So one more time, and enter. And if I run this, I get exactly the pattern which I want, right? So that was fairly easy. Let's try it out with different number. Let's say with 8. And as you can see, the pattern is still good for any number you specified. Of course, please don't specify the negative number, but you got the point. So let's go next. Well, here is the code also in this. As you can see, you can also put here empty string. It will output the new line. It's up to you what you put there. Now, let's say we have this nested list. Okay, so we have this list, and we want to print the whole list, to output the whole list into the output. So let's run first the definition of the list. And now you can access the list elements just like this, as we did in the last video. So that's fairly easy. So this refers to a second line, second element, because everything is indexed from 0 also in the nested loops. Now to print it, we can use these 4 cycles. So we are going for each row in the nested list. Now, in each iteration, the row will have the whole list, right? And that's the reason why we can iterate through the row in the second for cycle. And then we can just output the element. Again, we are putting the spaces in between each other, and we are printing the new line after each row. So if I run it, you can see that I outputted the nested list. That's perfect. Now, let's think about something different. So imagine we have this nested loop, and we want to first find the size of the largest row, right? So that's quite challenging, right, Michal? How do we do that? So in order to do that, we need to iterate through each line. Then we have to check the length of the line, and then we have to somehow remember the longest row in order to compare it. So you can see we can divide it by three steps. First, print the length for each row. So how to do that? I'm gonna show you. So let's first grab the nested list, and for row in nested list, we want to print the length of each row. So this guy over here will print the length for each row. So first is 3, 2, 4, 1. Now so the second subtask should be find the maxed length. Well, how can you find the max length? So in order to do this, we need to iterate through the rows and remember the previous max length and compare it with the current row. So we first set, we will create a variable which will consist of the length of the actual maximum in the current time. So before we run the cycle, we will set it to 0. And now we will go through each row. If a row length of the current row is greater than max, we gonna set the max to length row. And after this, we can print the max. So max length is max. And now amazing, if I run this, you can see that max length is 4. Yes, because this is the line. Now, so having an intermediate like variable where we store some intermediate results can help us in solving more complex problems. Now, but the thing was like find the size of the longest row and print the row, right? So now we not only want to know the size, but we also want to know the content of the longest row. So how to do it? We can create a variable called memory where we will store the intermediate max row. So first set it to empty array because we know in this variable we will store the arrays, so the lists. So now we are going through it, and if the current row is longer than max, we will not only set max to length of the current row, we will also set the memory to the current row. And now we can say at the end max length is, and the items are memory. Now when we run this, we got also the items of the longest row from the nested list. Pause the video, go through this code and try to code yourself, for example, the way how you can find the shortest row and the elements of the shortest row. Yeah, you can make it more challenging, try to do a list in list in list, and you can try to find out the longest row in the third level of the list. Fine. I want to also show you something which is called enumerate function. For example, you have this list of strings which consist of names, of different names of my friends, and now you will create something which is called an enumerate. So for example, first of all, let's look at this. This is how look the list, and when you put it into an enumerate function and put it into list function, because enumerate returns an enumerate object, you need to convert it to list. It will create a list of tuples where the first element is the index of the name. And now this can help us. Like, for example, we want to find the longest name in the array, in the list. So, and we want to find the index of it. So not just the size, not just the content, but also the index. Okay? So I copy pasted the same function from the last time, and this time we applied it to names, but we are iterating through an enumerate object. So because these are tuples, I showed you we can unpack the tuples into variables. So for each cycle, iteration of the cycle, we will not only have the name, but we will also have the index of the name. So the for cycle goes like this. For the given row, or for the given name, on the index and the value, is the length of the name greater than max? If it's a first iteration, it will be, please set the max to the length of the name, put the name into memory, and we need also a memory for the index of the name, and put in the memory index the index of the name. Okay? So for the each part, for the each cycle, we have this 0 and this set to nothing. So we are saying, is the length of the Michal greater than 0? Yes, it is. Then please set the length to length of the Michal, put into memory the name of the Michal because I was greater than max, and put the index, memory index into memory index, right? And at the end, just print out. Longest name is Katarina with the length of 8. And index is 3. Yes, it's 3 because we are indexing from 0. Fine. Feel free to go through these examples, take your time, try to run it on your own. I hope you learned something new today. I was trying to choose some interesting examples with the practical usage, which we can use in the project and also in the further videos. Okay guys, these were the nested lists and the nested for cycles. They are used quite often, so please take your time to get familiar with it, and I hope I see you guys in the next video. Thank you very much.